To read the Bible in a year, you need 30 minutes to listen or read and 5 days each week. Join us here at St.Andrews for Bible in a Year.
Proverbs, week 24.
Week 24. I have to ponder that for a minute. Week 24. Like, trying to wrap my mind around that a little bit. It's not really getting me anywhere.
This is the 24th episode of this. This is almost 6 months into Bible in a Year. It's been a lot.
It has been a lot.
And it's interesting sitting in Proverbs because getting into that middle chunk, it starts feeling a little repetitive.
Yes. I mean, the ones that are like sayings after sayings are really hard for me to grasp. Like, certain ones will just jump out and I'm like, okay, I'll think about that one.
Yeah.
But a lot of them just go by. But I loved chapter 8. Because it was different. So this is like the idea of wisdom calling, and then this whole thing is really more of a it's not exactly a parable. What am I looking for? It's an analogy.
Okay.
The whole thing is like an analogy of like wisdom personified.
Well, and we talked about that a little bit previously, where you
Yes.
have like foolishness is personified and wisdom is personified.
Yes.
And that accumulates with Proverbs 31.
Yes, so here 8, and I've forgotten because I haven't read Proverbs in a long time. There's a couple sections where it just talks about wisdom in a little bit more of a poetic form as opposed to the endless couplets. So I really like that because I'm like, oh, this is so nice. Like, does wisdom not call? Does she not raise her voice? At the crossroads she takes her stand. And I love that because we have those moments when we're standing at the crossroads. And this is like wisdom, if you allow wisdom's place at those crossroads. So I liked that very much.
And you get more of that as you go into Proverbs 9.
A little bit.
Yeah. And that kind of concludes, again, that bit of personification and goes into those later chapters that are just the saying after saying after saying.
Yeah. So a couple things stood out to me in 8. Verse 8, just what I wrote next to it is, that would be so refreshing. All the words of my mouth are righteous. There is nothing twisted or crooked in them. They are all straight to him who understands. Just like clarity be so refreshing sometimes. Verse 13, I also really loved this. In the Psalms, lots of places in Scripture, it talks about the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
Yeah.
But that's still something I think we wrestle with. And here, it says it differently. The fear of the Lord is hatred of evil. And I'm like, oh, is that almost like a way to define like what is the fear of the Lord? It's hatred of evil. I'm like, I can do that.
I mean, that works. I always took it as... So Proverbs does open with that in chapter 1.
Proverbs opens it?
With
I thought
verse
it was
7.
Psalm 1.
Well, it's verse 7. It's the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction.
Yeah.
And Psalms might start with that as
I'm looking.
well.
I'm looking. Oh, hold on. I went one page too far. Oh, not exactly. Nope.
But I always took that as the Lord is bigger and in that way of righteousness.
Yes.
So to fear him is to understand that our place.
Yes, and that's how I often understand it as well. Sort of like standing at the, base of a huge mountain or, right at sea level with a roaring ocean. There's that element of...
Oh, that's interesting.
What?
Because that perspective gaining for me is sitting out in the backyard and just watching the stars and the depth of that.
I have lived a lot of places with light pollution. Yeah.
There are some very dark places in Pennsylvania.
Your backyard?
Not dark enough. But
Sorry.
there are a couple where you can just see the Milky Way galaxy, that haze and fuzz. And it's a good perspective. It's a good way to
Yes.
put this into view of, to fear the Lord is to fear the one who can move the stars themselves.
Yes. And that, like, verse 27 and 8, it goes a little bit towards that. It says, when he is God. When God established the heavens, I was there. When he drew a circle on the face of the deep. When he made the firm from skies above. And then it goes on, and I was beside him like a master workman, it says in verse 30. And this is one of those, last week I talked a little bit about how wisdom, or Sophia in Greek, is like a personification of Jesus. And this is one of the reasons. As wisdom, it's describing a place that Jesus is.
It might be in next week's reading, but I was reading something else where I was like, oh, it felt very like John 1:1. And I want to say it was in the Proverbs towards the end where I was like, wow, this feels a lot like that. That is,
I love that passage.
that personification that is showing that Trinity, that aspect that is God the Father, Christ the Son, and how the Spirit moves all throughout the history of Scripture. So
We will look forward to finding that next week.
yeah, it's going to bother me now because where did I read that?
Yeah. So I love chapter 8. I'm like, oh, I can do this. I can hold on to things in this. The couplets are not the easiest form of reading for me. So I don't know.
Are there couplets that stand out to you?
Yeah, that's what I would do. Like ones that stood out, I'd sort of underline. At the beginning of 10, I'm liking the pairing. I guess I was noticing the pairing of father and mother, like in response to a child. A wise son makes a glad father. A foolish son is sorrow to his mother. Like, usually the pairings are both uplifting for both parents. That's not the best example.
I was reminding a student this week
Yeah.
that the first commandment with a promise is honor your father and mother.
Yes.
And it will go well with you in the land. At which their reply was to grumble at me.
Of course.
But
But
that's
they
there.
heard it. The
And-
advantage of a one step away adult.
And applied it just a little bit and went, oh, well, maybe this does work.
It's so hard when someone else is right.
But that's
And it's just hard when we're wrong, right?
yes.
It's hard.
But again, that's the beauty of this, where it's rooted in that. It's rooted in these promises and hopes.
Yeah.
And just, it's not the perfect word, but like right living.
No, it is. Righteousness means right living.
Yeah. It just feels a little off saying it is right living. But just do these things, and there's a result. There's a promise. Again, rooted in what it looks like to be a kingdom people.
Well, and I think it's also a lot about integrity and character. Because some of these things, like, the world is not going to thank you for or call you wise for, right? But you hold that in yourself. Like, that's who you are choosing to be, and you know why.
And it's taking a longer view.
Yes.
Because so often it lays out, wickedness is quick.
Yeah. Oh, what was
And
there
it
was
burns up
one that
fast.
was like the slippery hand of the fool.
Oh,
Like, I forget what it said.
it appears a couple times in a different
Yeah.
way, where it's a little slumber, a little rest, and everything falls apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was one that, like, love of sleep. It's not, and it wasn't good. And I was like, that's really too bad. I really like sleep. Which one stood out to you?
So a personal favorite that comes out of youth ministry is, where there are no oxen, the manger is clean, but abundant crops come by the strength of the ox.
Tell me more.
So Mark DeVries used that one
Yeah?
in his book, Sustainable Youth Ministry, and it was if you do youth ministry, it's going to be a mess. You can't have ox
How
without.
are those bath bombs on Sunday?
It was a mess. A little messier than I anticipated.
One of my sons was quite upset that they weren't real jewels.
Sorry, I don't have the budget for that.
No, right? I was like, oh. So youth ministry is a mess, but
if you want that work, I mean, if you want what is the result of it, you have to be okay with the fact that you're engaged in a piece of life that is messy.
So if youth ministry is clean, there's no kids.
And it's just you want.
So it's telling you to embrace the mess because it's creating growth.
Right.
Ah.
And then to communicate even that, hey, look, this is a messy ministry. You're dealing with kids. You're dealing with that whole pubescent side of life. And do you remember what it was like? And all of that turmoil? And now you're inviting that in. It's entirely different being a parent going through that on the other side of life. Kind of makes me look back and go, I'd rather go through this again than deal with it on this side of things. But that's one that stood out to me and was a reminder.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever really pondered that one before. I like it. And I think that's the thing. Like, so many of these together, it's hard to grab onto them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but reading through, it can speak to you at different points of life in different ways.
Yeah. Makes me wonder, though, like, how can we reference this book better in the midst of life? Because, like, there probably is a proverb that speaks well to this moment in life, but how am I going to find it in the midst of several hundred couplets?
I think that's the invitation to Proverbs, is it's just walk with it.
Like, keep reading it. Oh.
Yeah.
That wasn't really my goal, but we'll see.
Conveniently, there's, normally 31 to 30 days in a month, and Proverbs is 30 to 31 chapters.
True.
That's one way.
Interesting. Huh.
But yes, lots of couplets.
Lots of couplets.
And let us know if there's anything that jumped out to you as well. Is there a couplet that stood out to you?
So in 12, the first one in 12, whoever loves discipline loves knowledge. Which I think as age comes, you figure out, right? I mean, can I explain it to a 6-year-old? No. But he who hates reproof is stupid. And I think that's such a good reminder that, we need other people and we need other perspectives to really grow and learn. And so if we're not willing to hear or open our hearts to, things that may be hard to hear, then we limit ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So that one stuck out. Let's see. What else stuck out in my reading? Oh, I loved this one. Okay, 16:24. Because it was very positive. It's nice to have uplifting ones. Gracious words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul and health to the body. Like, what we say matters and how we say it. And there are people that, like, I just love talking to because everything they say feels gracious.
Yeah, there are people out there that are that way, and it's just, how?
I know, but I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that certainty piece, there in 25, the next one, there is a way that seems right to man, but its end is the way to death. So it's like, we can feel like it's right, but it can be leading us to where we don't want to go.
$17.27 is always a good reminder, and one that I try to remind myself of. Whoever restrains his words has knowledge, and he who has a cool spirit is a man of understanding. Even a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is deemed intelligent.
Yeah. There's almost always that one person in the room that they may not say much, but when they do, everyone listens.
Mm-hmm. And it's even it's a pause and ponder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then also, skipping ahead again, 18:21. Death
Ooh,
and,
I had that one.
death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits. He who finds... Oh, I skipped ahead a bit, or went further.
I
Sorry.
know, yeah. Only 2 lines. Yeah, I liked that one too, because I liked the images. And those who love it will eat its fruit, which made me wonder, is that like the fruits of the Spirit?
Well, that even had an imagery towards the gospel of the sword. The tongue is a double-edged sword.
Yeah. Yeah, that one stood out to me too. And I think overall, sort of the reading and nothing specifically was standing out. I was sort of gathering, a lot of these are about character. They're about relationships, especially families or teachers or business relationships and attitudes. So, I don't know. In the midst of nothing standing out, I got broad categories. Oh, here's the love not sleep one. I don't like this one.
Wait, what?
I am resistant. 2013. Love not sleep, lest you come to poverty. Open your eyes, and you will have plenty of bread. I say this as one who has really been sleep deprived for 6 years now. That feels unfair.
So, okay, that's always a struggle where it's...
Yeah.
Do you feel like you've done enough?
Oh, isn't that hard?
It is. Where it's, do I need to do more? Did I do enough? What is
Yeah.
that balance? Because you sit with something like that and you're like, nope, I slept last night. I should have probably done 10 more hours of work.
But if you don't sleep,
You
right?
go insane.
That's right.
But there is that contention where it's, have I done enough?
That achieving, that need to achieve. Yeah, I took a personality test several years ago in a formation group I was in. And one of the things was your top 5 strengths. And one of them, it said achiever. And I was like, I don't think this is right. And they're like, well, tell me about this. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm really good at procrastination. Well, less now that I'm a parent because I have less time under my control. But, yeah, it was really interesting because as they unpacked it for me, it was also about, yes, that having that sense of accomplishment in the midst of the day or the week, having things to check off,
That's
tangibly
yeah.
knowing what your work has done.
Which is interesting because that's a piece of the struggle that's within the church of
Yes.
that intangible of, okay, did it work? How long do I have to wait? And I think that is a contention, again, within what is this work?
Yeah, it is. Well, and because we have to be willing to try things and fail, right? And this is actually another thing I'm facing in parenthood. How do you explain that, failure is an opportunity to learn? Okay, you lost the game.
When you get that figured out, please let me know.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be individual for each child.
You're still not there.
So I'm trying to explain it. And it is hard, right? I mean, it's easier to run away and hide, but you're just but wait, do you want to learn the game? And are you going to learn if you always win? And you can do that, right? You can always play people that you're going to win with, but
that's no fun for them, and vice versa. You never then learn. And
right.
Yeah, growth is challenging.
Yeah.
And the opportunity to fail as well as succeed and balancing that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that took us some places.
It did. Hey, even in little couplets, that took us places.
But we're up through to 21. Is there anything else that jumps out at you? Or
Okay, 20 and 24.
20,
A
24.
man's steps are from the Lord. How then can man understand his way? And I think as we seek to walk in faith, we face this a lot, right? Like, I am trying to walk in faith. I am seeking God, but I don't feel like I know where to go. I think we end up in those places several times in the midst of our faith journey. And so I also liked that it was a question. And sometimes that is what you need for wisdom. You need the right question, not just an answer. But we like answers. It's clear, right? Where was that couplet that I was like, clear communication. But sometimes living into the questions.
It feels like you're given a navigation point. Get here. But how you get there's a little bit
Abstract.
yeah.
And yet, we have all of these very clear little couplets of things you can live into. So how do we deal with Proverbs? Is that what we, like, when a proverb stands out to you, and it goes, is that just when do you choose one? Is it almost like Lectio Divina? You choose one to carry with you for a while, and then choose another one. Like, even you telling me, like, I could read a chapter a day, I'm like, that's not going to work for me. It's almost like I could read 5 of them and see if one stands out to think about for a week.
I mean, the application you could probably use is in those stuck moments, sitting down and reading, and you've got a bunch of repetitive nature in it. So it's just, okay, there's wisdom in here that is the opportunity and offer of how do we get out of our ruts. Or just find that we're not the only one who is sitting there going, okay, which way am I going? Oh, it's as clear as mud. Okay, great. And
I do like sharing them, though, because the only one I'm going to remember today is the one you explained to me. You know, the ox and the mess. And I was like, oh, okay.
It was a very good
really
analogy
helpful.
that Mark used for what is youth ministry. Now, it can apply to many ministries because it's...
I think it applies to parenting.
Oh, my gosh.
Such a mess.
Yes.
Or to family. Do you know that before I got married, my fridge was beautifully clean? Everything was organized and it was all cleaned. Every trash day I cleaned it out, and now it's like, oh my gosh, where can it fit?
So the analogy I have for that one is when Melinda and I were first married. We had a very small kitchen. And it was enough for us to basically stand back to back in, and one person wash dishes and the other person do lunches for the next day, or however it worked.
Yeah.
And now we have a slightly bigger kitchen, but we can't coordinate.
Yeah.
Because you have a kid running in, a dog tripping you, it went from order and chaos and 2 people being able to work in synchronicity to, please don't be in here, I don't want to kill you with hot frying pan.
I know, right? You're like, why can't you go the other way? Oh, yeah. I'm just like,
But it is true. I mean, it applies to family, it applies to any aspect of life where it's okay, if you're going to do it, it's not going to look pretty all the time.
Yeah.
And
people are going to be messy.
always.
Always.
And parenting is not for the faint of heart.
No. Your kitchen, though, reminds me when Riley was about 1.5 years, so he was walking really good, right? I opened the oven and he comes right around the corner, and I pushed him so he wouldn't touch the open oven, right? And he was crying, and I was like, this is so much better than it would have been.
That's actually an analogy I've used with the kids.
Yeah.
Of, when you were small, we didn't let you near the stove.
Oh, no.
It was one of those things where you would get a smack on the butt, or you could, stick your hand on the stove and get something that would be permanent.
Yeah, no, he got body blocked and pushed away.
Yeah, and
I was like, ah!
It was just that analogy I've used with him in the past where It's not that we don't want you to use the oven, we just want you to grow into being able to use the oven.
Yeah, I'm still not there. Not there.
Oh, no, not for a bit.
Oh, not there. So Romans.
Romans.
And we did through 12 last week, didn't we?
We did, because I'm still sitting with that mind-blowing last chunk of Romans and using that for weddings.
I like it. I think, though, we did kind of skip over the gifts section in 12.
We did.
Yeah, because I was reading it through this morning, and I was like, oh, that's right. Like, here is some of that language we see so much more in Corinthians with Paul. But is in one body we have many members, and the members do not all have the same function. You know, like that's very clear in Paul's ecclesiology or church stuff.
Which again makes sense because he's looking at a very big church in different cities that have very different giftings, challenges, and opportunities, and he has to address each differently.
Yeah.
Christ is the center, but what Corinth is
different.
dealing with is different than what Romans are dealing with, and what Thessalonica is dealing with, or Ephesus.
Yeah.
And
I really like that part of Pauline's sort of theology, though, that we need to figure out sort of, and I think it changes in each community in each season. You know, some people say, well, this is my gift and this is not my gift. And I'm like, well, maybe it's not your gift right now. Or not yet. Or in another context. But like to just say it's not, I think we end up limiting what the Spirit can do.
And if I remember correctly, Paul kind of hits on that, oh, that you would all function in these ways.
Yes.
But.
Yes.
And I'm badly misquoting that. I gotta remember where that is.
Yeah. Corinthians and Ephesians come to mind, but we'll have to see. Have we already read Corinthians?
No.
Okay.
No, we did.
Can't remember. We did Ephesians.
Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians.
Okay.
Do you have a moniker for how you remember that?
I have a song.
Okay. Everybody has something different for that.
Yeah. I have a song for all the books of the Bible. I just sing it to myself. Runs through my head when I'm looking for something. So, yeah. Oh, and Hebrews, but that's not Pauline. Yeah. Yeah, but that's worth connecting to in the midst of Romans 12.
Yes, it is. And again, it's a good base showing how Paul was working consistently with different churches.
Yeah. So he really starts getting into the realities of living.
Yes.
And faith. And I mean, this is the book to the people in Rome who lived under an emperor who basically claimed to be the god they should worship.
And digging into it a little bit more, this might have been written to them right as they were going into like a state of exile, pushed out of Rome itself by the emperor.
That came in different waves.
Yeah, so I just got into a section of study on that, and I need to maybe go a little deeper, but...
Yeah. And, I mean, Paul himself has been in prison many times, and yet he starts out chapter 13 saying, "Let every person be subject to the governing authorities. For there's no authority except from God. And those that exist have been instituted by God." I'm going to say, or allowed by God.
That's probably adequate with what the original Greek was.
And I think that's really worth pondering. Because there are moments in history, in Israel's history, where God has used someone on the other side in an unexpected way.
Yes.
It makes me think of, who is the cupbearer? Nehemiah, right? Was the cupbearer?
Yeah. I think he was a cupbearer.
Yeah, because he's the one who asked to go back.
Yeah, he was the last one, because you had Ezra before him.
Was Ezra the cupbearer? Anyways, so, I mean, there were emperors of these empires where the people had been exiled, and yet they were a part of the restoration.
Well, and so pulling back into Proverbs.
Really? Oh, nice.
Proverbs 16, verse 4. The Lord has made everything for its purpose, even the wicked for the day of trouble.
So I think it's worth pondering that there will be seasons where we like who is in power and seasons where we don't. And it's worth pondering that really our greatest authority is God. But yet on earth, what the apostles show us is to live according to the law.
Well, and I think even with what the apostles show us, I mean, they didn't focus big picture and, run around and overthrow the government. They focused on, this is the community I'm in.
Yep.
These are the people I'm serving. This is the mission.
Yeah. And the mission is very clearly to share the love of Christ.
And they created something that was global with what Christ had already done and commissioned them towards.
Yeah.
But by focusing in their community.
And, it's so funny because I have so many friends who are pastors that'll be like, well, Jesus was very political. And yes and no. I mean, Jesus told people how to live, but how thrilled would they have been if he started railing against Herod or Pontius Pilate, right? But Jesus never did that. That's actually probably one of the reasons he was crucified.
Well, and there's that contrast that as we're going into Holy Week, you have Jesus, Bar Joseph, and Jesus, Bar Barabbas.
Yeah.
One was political, one was not. And the one that, we crucified was...
The one who was not. And it is true, like Jesus was political, but that's because he was telling us how to live. And he didn't focus on the government because he focused on the kingdom of God.
And everything that was his politic was grace. Yeah, it may offend, but it may offend because you're on that outside, and there's that angst that is, maybe I'm not living right. Maybe I'm not loving my neighbor the way they should because they're the...
Right. Maybe I'm using my faith as a shield to protect me and to prove who I am instead of to transform me.
Right. And so...
Yes. And when he's directly asked, right, he says, give to God what is God's. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's.
I do love that where he's like, whose face is on this coin? Caesar's? All right, give it to him.
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty simple.
So, I think 13:1 can be an uncomfortable verse, but I think it's worth pondering.
It is. And I think it is big picturing, intending us to drive deeper to our communities.
Yeah. And to care for the people around us.
Yeah.
That's very important.
Well, and that finishes with the last half of 13, where it's walk in love. We fulfill the law in the actions of love.
Yeah.
And it's building up our neighbors. It's living into the law in grace and finding that grace in others.
Yeah, verse 8, owe no one anything except to love each other. And then it lists the commandments that are between people. I mean, the first 4 are about you and God. The next 6 are about us and one another, because it's messy.
Well, and verse 10, love
Yes,
does
I love that.
no wrong to a neighbor, therefore love is the fulfilling of the law.
Yes, that got a star.
Actually, I don't know why I didn't highlight that. It's a really good question.
And so it's sort of, Paul is saying, now's the time for you to wake up. Salvation is near. Love your neighbors. Care for people around you. Cast off the darkness and live in the light of Christ. And that is good no matter what the political situation is. Whether you're in prison, whether you're being pushed out of something. So that is worth pondering.
Which then rolls us right into what is chapter 14.
Chapter 14.
And I love how Paul opens that up. As for the one who is weak in faith, welcome him, but do not quarrel over opinions.
Yeah.
And he lays out some of the opinions, some of the pieces that have been problems and quarrelsome in the church and other churches.
Don't ever start there. Really? Right?
Yes.
Okay.
But then it accumulates in verse 7, for none of us live to himself, and none of us dies to himself. For if we live to the Lord, and if we die to the Lord. So then whether we live or whether we die, we are the Lord's.
Yeah, I love that verse. I use that verse often with funerals. Because that's where we really hold that in faith.
Well, and it's building a community that's going to look different.
Yeah.
It looks diverse. It looks like a mess. But it's all under Christ.
So it's also kind of a lot about eating. Like, is this literally about eating? Or is this about, like, things you consume in life? Like, the things you're focusing on, the things that you're internalizing? I was a little confused.
I think it's both. I mean, yeah, eating is the analogy that helps us understand that what we consume is what fuels us. So what we consider, what we interact with in our thoughts, in our life, and how we interact is going to be what fuels what we do. That's how I've always viewed it.
Reminds me of this sermon I heard once in college where the pastor was talking about meditation. And he was talking about cows. Because cows just chew. They chew it, and then they swallow it. And it'll, like, come back up and they chew it some more. Which sounds super gross. And I don't know a whole lot about cows, even though my kids keep saying we should get a cow. And I'm like, this is killing me. It's hilarious.
I don't like cows.
You don't?
I've been in paddocks with them and worked with them. I just don't like cows.
Oh, I like cows. I've worked with them too. I'm okay with it. Although, no, that's too far of a side tangent. I'll tell you that later. The conversation last night about cows and bulls, that was a lot.
Okay. That's going to go places.
Well, trying to explain things to my sons is interesting. So 15, it helps remember us where Paul's ministry is focused as he lifts up the Gentiles, making sure there's a moment they're encouraged as well. And I really loved the verse he pulls out of Isaiah in 15:12.
Isaiah 11, verse 10.
Yeah, the root of Jesse will come, even he who arises to rule the Gentiles. In him will the Gentiles hope. Really, in him will we all hope. But yeah. And then the next verse is, I often adapt this for a benediction, so I really love that verse. I add a phrase about Christ to make it Trinitarian. I love that one.
Well, and that is one of the things that Paul does, and it's even in Hebrews where it's pulling back into the Old Testament, and there was a plan to always bring all people back in.
Yeah.
Israel got set apart, but there was a plan.
Yeah.
That it was redemption for all.
Well, and in 15:20, I really liked how this was so clear. And Paul says, and thus I make it my ambition to preach the gospel, not where Christ has already been named, lest I build on someone else's foundation. And, he's also saying that part is in this is probably why I'm not really going to make it to you. Somewhere he says he was actually planning to go to Spain and maybe he'd stop by, but he was going to Jerusalem.
That's in verse 24, 15.
Oh, okay.
I hope to see you in passing as I go to Spain, which I've read this multiple times. I don't know how I missed, because Spain is mentioned twice in that chunk.
Yeah.
Where it's, oh, wow.
But then, 25, at present, however, I'm going to Jerusalem. And we know what happens in Jerusalem. He gets arrested in Jerusalem. Even though everyone said, don't go to Jerusalem, don't go to Jerusalem. He goes to Jerusalem.
And there's some speculation that after he was in Rome, he actually did make it to Spain. Now, it's tradition.
I have not heard of this.
it's not a very popular tradition.
Yeah, I mean, he went.
But
No,
that
it's
he
really
might have
not.
gotten over to Spain, up into Gaul, and then back down to Rome.
On the ship?
No. Post being in Rome for, 3 years.
Before they killed him?
Mm-hmm. That he might not have died then. He might have made it over to Spain. There's a single village somewhere up in Germany that has a tradition that is also that Paul made it there.
I think this is something to go in that I doubt it.
It's an
section.
interesting thought.
Yeah. It's
a speculative that Paul made that fourth mission journey from Rome as the base.
I don't have a lot of evidence that he ever got out of prison in Rome, so it's hard to imagine this.
Neither do I, but it is an interesting thought, and I think it aligns with his heart.
Yeah.
That he would have been trying to find a way
to go to Spain.
Yeah.
I mean, right here, right, we're just reading about that crossroads, right? He's even writing it. As he's writing Romans, I hope to see you in passing as I go to Spain. Here's the good plan. But at present, I'm going to Jerusalem. Oh, dear. So, that was very interesting.
And then Paul's closing out with the greetings and the final moments, which it's not a lot of meat of what is his belief, but I find it beautiful in how he's connecting and drawing names and people into this whole thing that is establishing this continued growth.
Yes.
That's community centered.
Well, and he's connecting people. Yeah. So several years ago, someone called me with, a possibility, and he said, would you be interested in that? And I said, okay. He's like, great. I'm going to write you an introductory email because I had to talk to this person I didn't know. And I'd never read one before. It was great. It was so nice. Like he said, this is Robin. You're going to love this about her, and this is what she does. And then here, this is Brian, and this is what he does. And I think you're going to really appreciate one another. And I was like, this is amazing. I've never had an introduction via email before, but I feel like this is what he's doing via letter. And also maybe help people know who is safe. Like, these are truly people who Paul knows, and he knows they may get there.
I never considered it in that way.
Yeah. Because then, we have, where was the other thing? 17, watch out for those who cause divisions and can create obstacles, right? Which could be in the community, or also those who show up and pretend to be in the community.
Well, and we're going to deal with that in, I think it's 2 Thessalonians?
Mm-hmm. But I love the details. It's almost like in the Old Testament we get some of these details in genealogies. But this is like, they're still alive in the community, right? But I mean, look at this. Greet Rufus, chosen in the Lord. I'm not going to have another kid, but if I did, Rufus would be a good name. Also his mother, who has been a mother to me as well. And like, we learn about Paul. How he connects to people and how he describes people tells us about his relationships. And I think that is, it's very endearing.
It is.
Yeah.
And then Paul's doxology, closing out.
Oh, hold on, before you get there. One of those fun words that we threw around in seminary was amanuensis. And that is the person who wrote the words while Paul is talking.
Okay.
Fancy word for script. Because you could be confused, right? You're like, wait, I thought Paul was writing the letter. But here in verse 22, I, Tertius, who wrote this letter, greet you in the Lord. Like the scribe. He's the scribe.
Well, and that feeds into the thought that Paul's thorn in his side was his vision. Because he uses a scribe often.
All the time.
And a couple of times there's, I write this in my own hand.
Yeah.
So
now the doxology.
Now the doxology. I think it's a beautiful way, just closing out.
It is. I love how Paul begins and ends things with, good uplifting words.
Mm-hmm. Well, and just even the revelation of the mystery that was kept secret for long ages.
Yeah.
Has now been disclosed.
I love that too. I love how this doxology ends Romans with that turn towards the mystery of God right in our midst. I think I like Romans better now. I mean, I liked parts of it, but now I think I like the whole of it better than I did before.
You get a little beat up along the way, but it builds you up.
Mm-hmm.
And it does end in this place that is community and kingdom centered. And we're living out entirely differently.
Yeah.
Now, something I did appreciate. I enjoyed reading this alongside Proverbs.
Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah. Where it was, okay, it starts a little weird, Romans 1-7. But as you're going 8-16 and the
There's
wisdom
a lot
running,
about
yeah,
how to live, and yeah, I can see those connecting
Yeah.
well.
I did not expect that, and I appreciated that.
Yeah. Well, and I'm finding that I'm doing better with this than I thought. I've really become very narrative focused, so this is good. All right, so next week is week 25.
And Holy Week.
And Holy Week, we really deserve a prize.
We'll also have the new stickers out soon for when we wrap up with what is the second quarter.
But the other bookmarks are already out?
They should be out soon. Hopefully.
Third quarter.
We're going into the third quarter of this.
We have to keep going. This is what I remember in junior high. The third lap of the mile was the hardest.
Yeah, but we already got through Leviticus and Deuteronomy and
You're right.
Numbers.
Leviticus was rough.
Yeah, we got through where Bible in a Year readings go to die. And we're in a lot of the good stuff. We're going to be heading into the exilic period soon, and that gets...
Oh, yeah. That's a lot.
wild.
Well, and we still have John and Luke to do, right?
Yeah, we still have John and Luke to do.
Do we get a gospel each quarter? Is that how they do
I
it?
think it is. I really do think that's what it is. It's a gospel each quarter. Because I think we open up with John pretty quick into the third quarter.
Ooh, I love John. John's one of my favorites.
Maybe.
Well, we'll still get to read John.
Matthew.
In the next 27 weeks, we will get to read John.
Yes. So.
All right. May God bless you in your reading. And here, let's just end with Paul's doxology. Now to him who is able to strengthen you according to my gospel and the preaching of Jesus Christ according to the revelation of the mystery that was kept secret for long ages, but has now been disclosed through the prophetic writings, has been made known to all nations, according to the command of the eternal God, to bring about the obedience of faith. To the only wise God be glory forevermore through Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I love